My lover has amnesia. More precisely, in his memory bank, the part about me has been completely erased. I know he's acting, but I don't even have the strength to expose him. In a single day, our red marriage certificate became a cold divorce certificate. However, 3 days later, the wedding of the century which I had meticulously planned and poured all my heart and soul into for a month still took place as scheduled. The groom under the spotlight was still him, but the bride walking towards him was his ex-girlfriend, with whom he had been entangled for 5 years. Until one day, his eyes red and furious, he gripped my wrist tightly. "Chloe, where have you been? Why haven't you come to see me even once?" I simply withdrew my hand subtly, looking at him with perfect defensiveness. "Sir, who are you? Do we know each other?" "Chloe, come and finalize the divorce." On the other end of the phone, Sebastian's voice was cold and unwavering. Before I could respond, the dial tone pierced my eardrums. This was the first thing he did after his amnesia. We had just recited our vows in this hall that morning, and this afternoon he was going to destroy it all with his own hands. When I pushed open the glass door of the Civil Affairs Bureau alone, I saw Sebastian immediately. He wasn't alone. The woman clinging tightly to his arm, so intimately, was someone I knew all too well, Vivian. Before meeting me, she and Sebastian had gone through 5 years of on-again, off-again relationships. Now that he had forgotten me, she had naturally taken his place. Seeing me approach, Vivian's smile vanished instantly, replaced by an awkward expression. "Chloe, please don't misunderstand. Sebastian and I are just..." Even as she spoke, her fingers tightened around the man's arm. Sebastian instinctively grasped her hand, pulling her to his side, his eyes radiating an undeniable possessiveness. I asked Vivian to come with me. "You don't need to misunderstand anything. She's my girlfriend." My heart felt like it had been squeezed by an invisible hand. Meeting the hidden smugness in Vivian's eyes, I felt numb and mechanically nodded. There were very few people getting divorced today. The clerk at the window looked up at me in surprise as she took the documents. She recognized me. After all, just a few hours ago, she was the one who smiled and handed us our marriage certificate, saying, "May you have a long and happy marriage." Now, the leading lady had changed, and the story had turned into a divorce. I stood alone opposite them, like an incongruous joke. This doesn't quite follow the procedures," the clerk said, her face showing difficulty, her suspicious gaze shifting between the three of us. Sebastian's brows immediately furrowed, revealing a hint of annoyance. Without a word, he made a phone call. The power of capital is always immediate. Soon, the divorce certificate, radiating despair, was shoved into my hand. My fingertips traced the rough cover, and I could only manage a smile more painful than tears. "Now that the paperwork is done, you can't possibly still be hanging around Sebastian's place, can you?" Vivian asked casually, then covered her mouth as if she'd said something wrong. "Oh, I'm sorry. I know you have nowhere to go right now. After all, we were husband and wife. If you really wanted to stay a few more days, Sebastian probably wouldn't. Since we're divorced, move out today." Sebastian coldly interrupted her, his tone chillingly matter-of-fact. His condescending indifference was incredibly convincing. My throat tightened, and my gaze fell once more on the bright red divorce certificate. He'd played dumb for so long, all just to have a legitimate reason to kick me out, hadn't he? There was really no need for that. I've never been one to cling or pester. If this 5-year relationship is destined to end in a ridiculous failure, I'd rather leave with dignity. I took a deep breath, suppressing all my emotions beneath a calm facade. "Okay." Stepping out of the hall, the car parked at the bottom of the steps stung my eyes. It was the wedding car we'd personally chosen. On the day we signed the contract, Sebastian had said with dreamy eyes, "On the wedding day, I'll drive it myself to pick up my Chloe." And now, before I'd even opened the door, Vivian was already sitting in the passenger seat. Sebastian leaned over and considerately pulled her seatbelt. At that close distance, Vivian tilted her head back and sweetly kissed his cheek. Perhaps sensing my gaze, Sebastian instinctively looked up. Vivian followed his gaze and spotted me, immediately protesting coquettishly. "I'm sorry, this is Sebastian's personal car. I don't like other women touching it." "Whatever you want," Sebastian said, his eyes full of indulgence. The engine roared and we sped away. The chilly early autumn wind, carrying the acrid smell of exhaust fumes, hit me. I blinked hard at my dry, red eyes, then turned and hailed a taxi. When I returned to that familiar villa, I was greeted by a tightly closed door. My suitcase lay overturned on the steps, my clothes and belongings scattered like trash. I knocked for a long time before Aunt Martha, the housekeeper, finally opened the door a crack, looking apologetic. "These were all ordered to be thrown out by Miss Vivian," she began, hesitating. "Oh dear, are these your personal belongings?" Vivian emerged from behind the porch, arms crossed, looking down at me. "I'm so sorry. I thought it was trash left by the previous owner, so I had it cleaned up. You're so magnanimous, you won't be angry, will you?" I coldly watched her clumsy performance, a mocking smile playing on my lips. Miss Vivian's manners are truly eye-opening. "Chloe, don't push your luck." A sharp shout came from inside. Sebastian strode over to Vivian, staring at me with the icy gaze of someone looking at an enemy. He glanced at the mess on the floor and scoffed. "What's the difference between this junk and trash? Only you would treat it like treasure." My heart clenched, as if filled with shards of glass, the pain rendering me speechless. "Enough talk, get out with your things. I don't want to see you in this house again." Me neither. There was no point in arguing. I swallowed the metallic taste of blood rising in my throat, knelt down, and silently stuffed the scattered items into my suitcase. I hadn't lived here long, but I had an unusually large amount of stuff. 2 large suitcases were crammed full. Every corner of this villa, from the feel of the sofa fabric to the glow of the floor lamps, was something I had personally designed and chosen. I had once thought this would be a haven where Sebastian and I would spend the rest of our lives. Now the shell remained, but the soul had been hollowed out. Everything had changed. I turned around, dragging my heavy suitcase. Behind me came Vivian's exaggerated breathing. "Phew, the air feels so much fresher after getting rid of all this junk." Sebastian then ordered, "Martha, get someone to do a thorough deep cleaning. If you find anything that belongs to her again, throw it in the trash." I paused for half a second. I tilted my head back, forcing back the tears welling in my eyes. I didn't turn around, just turned my back to them and said, "It's okay. The trash I don't want is yours." I slept for 2 whole days in a cramped rented room, as if trying to exhaust 5 years' worth of weariness all at once. Until the 3rd day, a phone call from my partner forcibly pulled me back to reality. I coldly watched her clumsy performance, a mocking smile playing on my lips. Miss Vivian's manners are truly eye-opening. "Chloe, don't push your luck." A sharp shout came from inside. Sebastian strode over to Vivian, staring at me with the icy gaze of someone looking at an enemy. He glanced at the mess on the floor and scoffed. "What's the difference between this junk and trash? Only you would treat it like treasure." My heart clenched, as if filled with shards of glass, the pain rendering me speechless. "Enough talk, get out with your things. I don't want to see you in this house again." Me neither. There was no point in arguing. I swallowed the metallic taste of blood rising in my throat, knelt down, and silently stuffed the scattered items into my suitcase. I hadn't lived here long, but I had an unusually large amount of stuff. 2 large suitcases were crammed full. Every corner of this villa, from the feel of the sofa fabric to the glow of the floor lamps, was something I had personally designed and chosen. I had once thought this would be a haven where Sebastian and I would spend the rest of our lives. Now the shell remained, but the soul had been hollowed out. Everything had changed. I turned around, dragging my heavy suitcase. Behind me came Vivian's exaggerated breathing. "Phew, the air feels so much fresher after getting rid of all this junk." Sebastian then ordered, "Martha, get someone to do a thorough deep cleaning. If you find anything that belongs to her again, throw it in the trash." I paused for half a second. I tilted my head back, forcing back the tears welling in my eyes. I didn't turn around, just turned my back to them and said, "It's okay. The trash I don't want is yours." I slept for 2 whole days in a cramped rented room, as if trying to exhaust 5 years' worth of weariness all at once. Until the 3rd day, a phone call from my partner forcibly pulled me back to reality. "Fine," Vivian suddenly said, irritably pushing the proposal aside. "I'm not satisfied with any of the changes. Let's go back to the original plan. After all, Chloe, you're most familiar with that plan. I trust you the most." My fingers gripped the edge of the tablet tightly. The original plan she spoke of was the one I had designed for myself. Seeing my pale face and silence, Vivian smiled contentedly. "The wedding is tomorrow afternoon. Time is a bit tight, but I'm confident that with your professional skills you can make it perfect, right?" I was stunned. Tomorrow afternoon. That was the time Sebastian and I had agreed upon. Meeting Vivian's provocative gaze, I felt an unprecedented sense of absurdity and disgust. All the hard work I'd poured my eyes out into had ultimately benefited her. After a long silence, I heard my own hoarse voice. "Okay." "Darling," Vivian nestled into Sebastian's arms, smiling like a victorious fox. "Chloe has really helped us a lot. We'll have to give her a big red envelope after the ceremony tomorrow." Sebastian didn't even lift an eyelid, his voice icy. "Doing things for money is her job. Otherwise, would I have hired her for charity?" Vivian's laughter grew even more unrestrained. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I was so tired, even the strength to be angry had been drained. When I opened my eyes again, I had suppressed all my emotions, as calm as a motionless machine. "No problem. Customer first, everything will be as you wish." After they left, the heat in the air seemed to dissipate, and I let out a self-deprecating sigh of relief. I really didn't want to have any more entanglement with them, but in this play of life, once the curtain rises, the protagonist has no right to call it a halt. I rubbed my throbbing temples, forcing myself to calm down. They left so gracefully, leaving me with a mess. Fortunately, I had been planning this wedding for a month. The basic framework was in place, and all that was left was the final touches. Even so, I stayed up all night. The next afternoon, before the wedding officially began, I struggled to get out of bed. At this point, I had only slept for 2 hours, my vision was blurring, and every step felt like walking on cotton. Just as my body swayed and I was about to fall, a strong arm caught my waist. I opened my eyes abruptly, meeting Sebastian's deep, cold gaze. As if electrocuted, I instinctively pushed him away. A flicker of surprise crossed his eyes, quickly replaced by an even deeper chill. "What are you standing there for? The scene's so chaotic, shouldn't you, as the chief planner, be keeping an eye on things?" I forced a smile, saying nothing. Money's hard to earn, and this is tough. Now that I'd taken that buyout fee, I didn't even want to waste the energy arguing with him. Just as I was about to turn and leave, a sweet, cloying voice called out to me. Vivian walked over, wearing that exquisitely beautiful pale purple wedding dress. The layers of tulle accentuated her slender waist. She was breathtakingly beautiful. My gaze inevitably lingered. This wedding dress was the one Sebastian had personally chosen for me. He said that with the purple lavender and this skirt, I would be the most beautiful bride in the world. Now, the dress remains the same, but I am no longer the bride. I clenched my fists, the pain of my nails digging into my flesh barely holding back my crumbling nerves. Vivian twirled triumphantly in front of me, her smile both fake and radiant. "Chloe, do you think this wedding dress looks good? Does it match today's purple theme?" I was speechless, only able to nod blankly. A glint of something else flashed in her eyes, and she suddenly suggested, "Since Chloe is so familiar with the plan, why don't you be our wedding MC?" The taut string in my mind snapped completely at that moment. I gritted my teeth, staring at her without saying a word. Even Sebastian frowned and said softly, "Vivian, stop it, she's not suitable." "What's unsuitable?" Vivian clung to his arm playfully. "I trust Chloe's professionalism. She's been in this industry for so many years. If she can't even handle being a host, then there's no point in her wedding planning company continuing to operate, right?" Sebastian, exasperated by her persistence, turned to me, his gaze instantly shifting back to its harsh, cold indifference. "Miss Sue, the hosting duties are yours." My smile was more like a grimace. "What if I said I didn't want to?" Sebastian frowned, his tone dripping with blatant threat. "Then I can only conclude that you lack the capacity to handle large projects. I think a company like that has no reason to survive in the industry." I bit my tongue hard, the taste of blood instantly filling my mouth, forcibly suppressing a sob in my throat. How humiliating. The phrase, "parting amicably," is a joke in the face of capital and malice. Since he insists on humiliating me, there's no need for me to maintain that pitiful facade any longer. I nodded numbly, my steps faltering slightly as I brushed past them. I lowered my voice, speaking in a hushed tone only the three of us could hear, and gave Vivian a soft smile. "Miss Vivian, do you really enjoy wearing other people's second-hand clothes?" The words left my lips, and I turned and left without looking back, completely ignoring Vivian's face, which instantly darkened and twisted. At 6 o'clock in the evening, the wedding officially began. The sunset on the horizon was a fiery red, its afterglow spilling across the vast fields of lavender. Vivian, carrying the purple wedding dress that had originally been mine, walked towards Sebastian, step by step, to the rhythm I had designed. My eyes welled up with tears at that moment. This wedding, every lighting position, Every beginning and end of every song was a scene I had imagined countless times over the past month. But now, standing on the stage, I felt like a soulless puppet, mechanically reciting my blessings. All around me was thunderous applause and laughter, but my heart remained as still as a stagnant, decaying pool. The wedding ended late at night. I dragged my exhausted body back to my rented room. The moment I touched the bed, I was plunged into utter darkness. I awoke to the incessant ringing of my phone. I was burning up, my forehead felt like it had been scorched, and my vision was blurry. I struggled to find my phone. The words on the screen were illegible, but that familiar voice pierced my eardrums. It was Sebastian. He roared in an extremely dissatisfied and agitated tone, "Chloe, what the hell are you doing? Are you even going to take care of this mess left after the wedding? You disappeared first thing in the morning." I didn't hear a word he finished before hanging up. I didn't have time to deal with his tirade. Since I had already provided the service, the company would handle the rest of the paperwork. I didn't need to do it myself. I rolled out of bed, hastily swallowed a few fever-reducing pills, and drifted back into a deep sleep. This illness lasted a full week. At its worst, I spent 3 days on IV drips in the hospital. When I was finally able to walk again and return to my rented room, the lavender on the windowsill had withered into a dry, hard brown. Lavender symbolizes waiting for love. But my love had long been utterly trampled into ashes by his cold-bloodedness and my own cowardice. I expressionlessly blacklisted Sebastian's number. Since he wanted to feign amnesia, I would grant his wish. It would be best if we remained like parallel lines, never intersecting again. I didn't want to stay in this suffocating city. I began frantically applying for business trips, filling my life with work. A month later, when I returned from my last business trip, as I stepped out of the office building, I saw a familiar black sedan parked by the roadside. A man leaned against the car, smoking, the swirling smoke blurring his face. The moment he saw me, he stubbed out his cigarette and strode towards me. It was Sebastian. Before I could dodge, his large, iron-like hand gripped my wrist tightly. His eyes were bloodshot, and he demanded angrily, "Chloe, where have you been for the past month? Why didn't you reply to my messages? Why didn't you come to see me?" I pressed my lips together and looked up at him. My eyes held no anger, no resentment, only a desolate, lifeless emptiness. Maintaining a perfect defensive stance, I asked blankly, "Sir, may I ask who you are? Do we know each other?" The anger on Sebastian's face froze instantly, replaced by undisguised astonishment. His grip tightened involuntarily. "What nonsense are you spouting? Chloe, look at me, you don't even know who I am." A sharp pain shot through my wrist. I frowned, my expression turning icy. "Sir, please let go. If this harassment doesn't stop, I'll call the police immediately." He didn't let go. He stared intently into my eyes as if trying to find a flaw in his act, but all he saw was utter unfamiliarity and disgust. "Chloe," his voice trembled, tinged with a strange panic, "I'm Sebastian, I'm your husband." "I don't believe you." In the struggle, I hardened my heart and bit his hand hard. He winced in pain but still wouldn't let go. Without hesitation, I screamed, "Help, indecent assault." Passers-by quickly gathered around. Sebastian, completely flustered, frantically explained to the crowd, "I'm her husband, we're having a fight." I immediately seized the opportunity to shake off his hand, hiding behind the crowd in terror. "He's lying. I don't know this person at all. Please call the police." Half an hour later, we were sitting in the mediation room of the police station. The Civil Affairs Bureau records showed that we had indeed been married, but the dates on our marriage certificate and divorce certificate were the same. Looking at that record of a short-lived marriage, lasting less than 24 hours, the police officer's gaze towards Sebastian became extremely subtle. After receiving a stern reprimand, we walked out of the police station one after the other. Sebastian's gaze remained fixed on me, his voice terribly hoarse. "Chloe, you really don't remember me?" I took a few steps back in disgust, my tone as flat as if I were discussing the weather. "I had a serious illness a month ago, a fever damaged my brain, and I lost a lot of useless memories. Should I remember you? Since I've forgotten, it means you're not important." Sebastian's expression froze, as if he'd been punched in the chest. He opened his mouth, trying to explain. "Chloe, let me explain." Sebastian completely unleashed his deeply affectionate, relentless pursuit. He somehow got my apartment address, and like an abandoned stray dog, pitifully waited at the door every day. Every day when I opened the door, the first thing I saw was his once spirited face, now filled with humility. I frowned, my disgust undisguised. A flicker of pain crossed his eyes, but he still persistently handed me the breakfast he was carrying. Those were the custard buns and congee with preserved egg and lean pork that he'd gone to great lengths to buy, the packaging bearing the logo of my favorite shop. The plastic bag was still steaming hot when he handed it to me. I impatiently waved it away. With a thud, the paper bag fell to the ground. The plump buns rolled a few times on the dusty floor, gathering dirt. The scalding congee spilled everywhere, splashing onto my trouser legs. "Can't you just leave me alone this early in the morning?" I said, suppressing my anger. "It's really annoying." Sebastian froze. A few drops of scalding congee foam splashed onto the back of his hand, quickly leaving a glaring red mark, but he didn't even flinch, only apologizing in a low voice. "Chloe, I'm sorry, I just wanted you to have something hot." I couldn't bear to hear another word from him and slammed the door shut in front of him. When I changed my clothes and went out again, he was still waiting there, like an inescapable shadow. He tried to keep up with me, but ended up standing still, getting a face full of my exhaust fumes. At noon, he intensified his efforts, sending flowers and expensive lunches to the company. I refused them all. The deliverymen and takeout couriers, pressured by his repeated phone calls, were caught in a dilemma and finally had no choice but to pile the expensive items up at the company entrance. The midday sun was scorching. The lunches, left out all afternoon, emitted a foul, rancid smell. The once vibrant bouquet of roses, now tainted with the stench, looked both comical and pathetic. As I left work, I pinched my nose and threw all the stinking stuff into the trash can right in front of him. Looking up, I met his gaze as he waited by the roadside. "How much trouble do you have to cause others before you're satisfied?" I coldly questioned. Sebastian pressed his lips together, his eyes shrouded in a perpetual gloom. "Mr. Zai, is there any point in doing this?" I rubbed my aching temples. "I don't remember you, and I don't want to remember you. Please, get out of my life." His face turned deathly pale, and he swayed slightly. After a long silence, he finally choked out, "Chloe, please give me a chance. Give me a chance to help you regain your memory. I've had amnesia too, I know that feeling." "What a coincidence," I interrupted him softly. "You've had amnesia once, and I've had it once. Since neither of us remembers, let's call it even. Regaining memories, completely unnecessary." A broken sob escaped his throat. A numb pain spread across his face. "You're still blaming me, aren't you? I was deceived by Vivian, It doesn't matter," I emphasized again. "I don't care at all." His voice trailed off, his breathing becoming rapid and irregular. It was as if every instance of my indifference was a dull knife stabbing into his heart. As a wedding planner, I've seen it all before, dealing with all sorts of difficult, unexpected situations. So, in front of Sebastian, I always managed to maintain an almost cruelly stable composure. The only time I lost control was when he claimed to have amnesia and pressured me to divorce him. I knew he was faking it. It was just a performance to humiliate me and test my loyalty. In that performance, he watched me go crazy for him, shed pathetic tears for him, and a twisted smugness even flashed in his eyes. In his view, only by trampling me into the mud could he prove my uncontrollable love for him. This childish and malicious behavior wasn't love, it was blatant bullying. Therefore, he didn't deserve any forgiveness. But Sebastian seemed to have mastered this self-inflicted suffering tactic. One late night, I was scrolling through food videos and got so hungry that I casually posted on my WeChat moments, "I really want to eat this." Half an hour later, the doorbell rang. Sebastian stood at the door, his shirt soaked with sweat, his hair clinging damply to his forehead. He was carrying the very same trendy dessert I'd mentioned in my post. Judging from his rapid breathing, I could imagine he'd run all over the city that night to find it. But he didn't mention his hardship at all, just humbly handed it to me, saying, "Chloe, didn't you want to eat this? I bought it for you." My face showed no surprise, only a deeper disgust. I shoved his hand away, saying with revulsion, "You did this on purpose, didn't you? Knowing I'm trying to control my weight, you still bring me this high-calorie stuff in the middle of the night. Why do you always manage to make things worse?" The moment I closed the door, I saw a look of dejection in his eyes through the crack. But I still felt unsatisfied, so I flung the door open again. His previously extinguished eyes lit up instantly, filled with hope. "Chloe, you're willing to accept. Get lost," I scoffed, "and don't you dare peek at my WeChat moments again." I berated him mercilessly, then completely blacklisted all his contact information. Unable to reach me, he camped out near his rented apartment and company every day. Occasionally, I could hear him answering the phone outside. Vivian was hysterically arguing with him on the other end, while his company assistant was bombarding his phone, urging him to return and handle the stalled business. As president, his near-insane absences were severely damaging the company's interests. Shareholders were complaining, and he was in a dilemma. I thought he would back down, but he didn't. When I opened the door again, he looked extremely haggard, with stubble on his chin and bloodshot eyes. I even called the police, but after 2 days inside, he remained unchanged. The president of a listed company, insisting on being labeled a harasser. How despicable are you? I mocked. He remained silent, his jaw clenched, a silent protest fueled by an almost self-destructive stubbornness. I finally grew tired of this game. I crossed my arms, looking down at him condescendingly. Tell me, what will it take for you to disappear completely? Sebastian abruptly straightened up, a flicker of life rekindled in his eyes. Chloe, give me a week. Let me try to help you regain your memories. Once you remember everything, you will definitely come back to me. I stared at him meaningfully for a long time. You're that confident. Whether before or after the amnesia, the fact remains that you divorced me and married Vivian. I don't think I'll forgive a piece of trash once I regain my memories. Faced with my aggressive questioning, he instinctively took a half step back. But as if to mask some kind of guilt, his tone grew increasingly certain. As long as you remember, you'll definitely come back. I couldn't be bothered to expose this self-deceptive lie and said indifferently, Fine, I'll give you a week. If that doesn't work, you can get out of here. How about a month? He tried to bargain. Don't try to negotiate with me. I don't have time to waste on you. Besides, you don't have much time left either, do you? If you keep wasting your time like this, the Zai group might not even be in the Zai family's name anymore. He gritted his teeth and finally nodded. Fine. For the next few days, he held my hand and took me to every so-called romantic hotspot in the city. He talked incessantly about our first meeting. He said he fell in love with me at first sight, and to get closer to me, he meticulously researched my preferences. He did a really good job. He knew which bubble tea shop I liked, what color decor I preferred, and even my gaming habits. During that time, I felt like he was a soulmate made for me by heaven. Like an unsuspecting prey, I walked headlong into his woven net. Only after falling in love with him did I discover the cracks behind this perfection. But by then, I had already learned to lower my standards for love, to tolerate every one of his terrible traits. But I never imagined he could be that awful. I listened expressionlessly as he rambled on in my ear, watching him present those rotten memories like a clumsy tour guide. The more he talked, the redder his eyes became. He flipped through his phone's photo album, showing off those sweet pictures of them together. But as he scrolled through the photos, he suddenly came across one of him and Vivian. In the photo, Vivian was smiling brightly, affectionately kissing his cheek. Sebastian, as if burned, frantically put away his phone, stammering, Chloe, this isn't. I, however, was merely a spectator, asking curiously, I heard Vivian is your ex-girlfriend. You two were entangled for 5 whole years. Since your feelings were so deep, why didn't you grow old with her? I heard from the police that you're my ex-husband. I coldly interrupted him. Since you're my ex-husband, then there's even less reason for us to have anything to do with each other. Chloe, listen to me. Sebastian, another sharp voice broke in. Vivian chased after me angrily, her eyes filled with venomous hostility. She grabbed Sebastian's arm assertively, her voice shrill as she demanded, Why are you here? You actually came to see her behind my back. I scoffed, looking at these two clowns. Are you his wife? If so, you should ask your husband, not question an innocent bystander like me. Vivian's face paled, but she forced a smile, saying, Sebastian can't be wrong, he's just bewitched by you. However, this time Sebastian acted completely out of character, abruptly shaking off Vivian's hand. His gaze never lingered on Vivian. He took a step forward, but my wary look made him stop in his tracks. Chloe, he said in a low, hoarse voice, she's not my wife. I didn't register our marriage. You are my only legal wife. Vivian's face instantly turned deathly pale. She grabbed Sebastian's sleeve in disbelief. Sebastian, what are you saying? Let's go home, okay? Sebastian, as if touched by something filthy, reflexively pushed her away. Vivian collapsed to the ground, letting out a cry of pain, her eyes brimming with tears. It hurts, but Sebastian didn't even turn his head. He just looked at me with an almost pleading tone. Chloe, let me explain. I was amnesiac before, which allowed someone to take advantage of the situation and divorce you, but now I remember everything. I impatiently interrupted his heartfelt confession. I don't care. Please, stop bothering me. I turned and walked away resolutely and gracefully. This is the police station entrance, Mr. Sebastian, I threatened without turning back. Do you want to go in and experience it again? Behind me came Vivian's hysterical screams and their heated argument, and I, facing the setting sun, felt that only in this moment was the air truly fresh. After hearing my words, Sebastian seemed to deflate like a balloon, instantly falling silent. After a long silence, he finally found his voice, his tone as deep as a rock plunged into the ocean. Vivian is just my past, Chloe. You have to believe me, the only person I love now is you. I looked at him, finding it absurd. But when you lost your memory, the only person you accurately erased was me, yet you chose to run to her. This shows that in your subconscious, I am not irreplaceable, and she still holds a superior position. If that's the case, why cling to me so desperately? Wouldn't it be better to get back together with your true love? Sebastian's lips were deathly pale, like a fish out of water, his mouth open but unable to utter a single word. If it can be so easily forgotten, it means that memory itself is insignificant, I added casually, each word like a cold scalpel. You treated me this way, and I will treat you the same way. I looked directly into his panicked eyes, my tone shockingly calm. Besides, Sebastian, amnesia is never a legitimate excuse to degrade someone. His breath hitched, his pupils trembled violently. Chloe, 3 more days, his voice was hoarse, almost inaudible, with an almost morbid obsession. I will definitely make you remember our past. I responded with a mocking laugh, too lazy to even refute. On the 4th day, he brought back the blue cat he had boarded at the pet store. The kitten pounced on my feet as soon as it landed, nuzzling my palm affectionately, letting out a low, aggrieved whimper. Looking at its once glossy fur, now somewhat dull and withered, my fingers twitched slightly. This cat was a gift from him for my 26th birthday. That day, he held a large bouquet of purple lavender, and a tiny head, only 3 months old, peeked out from the flowers. Amidst the fragrant blossoms, he gently asked me, Chloe, would you give this little guy a home? I was completely charmed and tried to coax the kitten with a cute, squeaky clenched voice. He leaned in, his eyes filled with tenderness. The kitten needs a dad. You can't let it grow up alone at such a young age, can you? At that time, I thought it was a rehearsal for his proposal, and blushing, I agreed to move in together. Now, when Sebastian recalls this memory, his eyes overflow with tenderness. But as I stroke the cat in my arms, my heart feels like a frozen, stagnant pool. I remember the day he kicked me out. He didn't even glance at this cat. To him, it was just trash to be thrown away. You actually put the cat in lavender? I interrupted his nostalgia coldly. Don't you know lavender is poisonous to cats? What if it accidentally ate it and got poisoned? The more I spoke, the more ironic it became. Or is a living, breathing animal just a cheap toy to you, used as a prop when you want it, and left to wither away when you don't? Sebastian froze. He opened his mouth, then fell into a deathly silence again. This cat was someone I raised myself. For its sake, I researched everything, and since then, not a single lavender plant has appeared in our house. And this self-proclaimed devoted man is now using this fatal romance to boast about. That bullet from years ago finally struck him precisely between the eyebrows at this moment. Since it's my cat, why did you hide it? I questioned coldly. He had no words. I've lost my memory, so tell me, is it because I don't want to take care of it? I stared at him, watching him struggle in agony, filled with regret. Draft a gift agreement, I decisively informed him. I'm taking it with me, and you're not allowed to take it back under any pretext. Chloe, do you have to distance yourself from me like this? He murmured painfully. I scoffed, utterly extinguishing his illusions. Mr. Zai, please understand, in my world you're not even a stranger. On the last day of that week, the sunset was blood red, painting the sky a magnificent yet desolate picture. Sebastian led me back to the lavender fields of the estate. The furnishings were exactly the same as the absurd wedding a month ago, only the boisterous guests were gone. Amidst the purple waves, Sebastian slowly knelt on one knee before me. In his palm lay the wedding ring I knew all too well. 2 months ago, it graced my finger. A month ago, in the same place, he slipped it onto Vivian's finger. Chloe, this was the destination we envisioned together. He looked up at me, his gaze almost falsely pious. Su Mu, will you marry me again? I stared at the ring another woman had worn, a wave of disgust washing over me. Slap! I slapped him hard across the face. Do you think I'm some kind of recycling bin like Vivian, picking up every second-hand item? He turned his head away, half his face instantly swelling, frozen in place. I didn't wait for his reaction and turned to leave. He chased after me like a madman, his eyes bloodshot, grabbing my wrist. Just one last time, Chloe, come with me one last time. I shook my hand in disgust, but ultimately I reluctantly got into the car with him. Our destination was our former wedding home. This is our home, he hesitated before speaking. This is just the place you kicked me out of, I corrected. In the ensuing stalemate, the villa's front door was pushed open from the inside. Vivian rushed out, her hair disheveled. The moment she saw Sebastian, tears welled in her eyes, and she threw herself into his arms like a madwoman. Sebastian, you're finally back. Do you know how long I've waited? I'm pregnant, 4 months along. You're going to be a father. Sebastian's face instantly darkened horribly. He glanced at me in horror, then, as if touching some filthy virus, he forcefully shoved Vivian away. Bang! Vivian's frail body slammed heavily against the doorframe, then collapsed weakly down the steps. Her face turned deathly pale, her hands clutching her slightly protruding belly, a grimace of pain contorting her features. A streak of crimson blood seeped from beneath her, a stark and horrifying sight against the pristine white steps. Save the baby, she reached out to Sebastian. But Sebastian took a step back, his eyes as cold as ice picks. This child should never have existed. He turned and grabbed my hand, frantically explaining, Chloe, don't believe her nonsense. Shut up. I shoved him away, calmly dialing an ambulance. Is this the time for this? Get her to the hospital. The hospital corridor was suffocatingly white. When Vivian awoke, she had lost the baby, and her body was utterly depleted. I didn't wait for his reaction and turned to leave. He chased after me like a madman, his eyes bloodshot, grabbing my wrist. Just one last time, Chloe, come with me one last time. I shook my hand in disgust, but ultimately I reluctantly got into the car with him. Our destination was our former wedding home. This is our home, he hesitated before speaking. This is just the place you kicked me out of, I corrected. In the ensuing stalemate, the villa's front door was pushed open from the inside. Vivian rushed out, her hair disheveled. The moment she saw Sebastian, tears welled in her eyes, and she threw herself into his arms like a madwoman. Sebastian, you're finally back. Do you know how long I've waited? I'm pregnant, 4 months along. You're going to be a father. Sebastian's face instantly darkened horribly. He glanced at me in horror, then, as if touching some filthy virus, he forcefully shoved Vivian away. Bang! Vivian's frail body slammed heavily against the doorframe, then collapsed weakly down the steps. Her face turned deathly pale, her hands clutching her slightly protruding belly, a grimace of pain contorting her features. A streak of crimson blood seeped from beneath her, a stark and horrifying sight against the pristine white steps. Save the baby, she reached out to Sebastian. But Sebastian took a step back, his eyes as cold as ice picks. This child should never have existed. He turned and grabbed my hand, frantically explaining, Chloe, don't believe her nonsense. Shut up. I shoved him away, calmly dialing an ambulance. Is this the time for this? Get her to the hospital. The hospital corridor was suffocatingly white. When Vivian awoke, she had lost the baby, and her body was utterly depleted. She stared at me like an empty shell, her eyes blazing. It was you killed my child. Chloe, you bitch. I didn't even give her a second glance, only coldly reminding her. Miss Vivian, there are 360-degree surveillance cameras at the villa entrance. You came here to bother me, and your beloved man pushed you away, trying to extort money. You've got the wrong person. Vivian's sobs paused, then erupted into a shrill, piercing laugh. Sebastian, she turned to the man who had been protecting me, her eyes flashing with extreme hatred. I deliberately broke the condom, but if you could control your lust, I wouldn't have had a chance to get pregnant. Do you know which day that was? It was the month Chloe stayed up all night planning your wedding. You were gazing lovingly at her while rolling around in bed with me. What kind of good person do you think you are? Sebastian roared furiously, Shut up! He turned to me in a panic. Chloe, let me explain, that child couldn't possibly be mine, she's framing me. I calmly watched this dog-eat-dog farce, even wanting to applaud their brilliant acting. Mr. Sebastian, I don't need an explanation. I looked at him, my eyes devoid of any emotion. I said I don't care. Our deal is over. From now on, don't let me see you again. I turned and walked towards the elevator. Behind me came Vivian's desperate screams and Sebastian's futile attempts to stop me. Sebastian, you'll die a horrible death. Later, I moved the company to another seaside city, taking my cat with me. I bought a new house, filling the terrace with mint, but not lavender. Occasionally, while petting my cat, I'd see news about Sebastian in the local financial newspaper. The Sebastian Group's stock price plummeted due to poor decision-making and the president's frequent absences from work, and the shareholders were plotting to oust him. But what troubled him even more was Vivian's complete madness. I heard that after being discharged from the hospital, she became Sebastian's inescapable nightmare. She wandered around his company and apartment every day, muttering incoherently, "Sebastian, haven't you come back to me yet? This breakup has lasted too long, I'm so tired of waiting, the wicked will be punished by the wicked." And I, with the sea breeze blowing and my purring kitten in my arms, felt that the rest of my life was still long and the scenery beautiful.